Hello, this is Mrs. Roller, and I am working today to discuss coordinate adjectives. This takes the place for Learning Target 4. I can use a comma to separate coordinate adjectives. It was one of the challenges that hopefully you were able to finish during our grammar boot camp. Coordinate adjectives basically mean you need to know how to know when to use a comma when working with coordinate adjectives. Coordinate adjectives are defined as adjectives placed next to each other that are equal in importance. Robot voice means importance. Coordinate adjectives. You have some notes that you need to take. So, one of the things you need to do is write down that coordinate adjectives are adjectives placed next to each other that are equal in importance. If adjectives are coordinate adjectives, a comma is used between the adjectives. If the adjectives are not, then no comma is needed. Sometimes adjectives are next to each other, but are not coordinate adjectives. Let's consider this further. Also in your book, underneath challenge number 9 for coordinate adjectives, there is a thumb. Next to the thumb, there are 2 questions that you need to write. These are the 2 questions. To determine if adjectives are coordinate or not coordinate, you use the following tests. If and can be added, placed smoothly between 2 adjectives, then it is a coordinate adjective. If the adjective's order can be reversed, it is a coordinate adjective. These 2 questions need to be placed near the rule of thumb, which is on challenge 9 in your grammar boot camp blue or orange booklet. If you ask these questions, can and be placed smoothly between adjectives, and can the and or can the adjective's order be reversed? If the answer to both or either of the questions is yes, then the adjectives are coordinate adjectives. Let's look at some examples. An example of a coordinate adjective. We saw a happy, lively poodle. In this example, a comma does belong between happy and lively because they are coordinate adjectives. To understand this, we try the 2 tests. First, we try the and test. Can an and be placed in between? Can we say we saw a happy and lively poodle? And the answer is yes. Happy and lively poodle does make sense. The next question is, can the 2 adjectives be reversed? Let us try that. In this case, it would read, we saw a lively, happy poodle. And again, it does not change the meaning to say lively, happy poodle or happy, lively poodle. The adjectives make sense in the reverse order, and thus this is a coordinate adjective which requires the comma. Here is an example of something that is not coordinate adjectives. We saw a young golden retriever. In this example, you'll note that there is no comma. No comma belongs between young and golden because these are not coordinate adjectives. To understand this, we try the 2 tests. The and test. We saw a young and golden retriever. And does not really make sense there. So we would not have an and. Likewise, if we change the order of the adjectives to say the golden young retriever, that also does not make sense, since golden is actually part of the descriptor of retriever, and golden young retriever does not mean the same thing. In order to illustrate this further, let's take a look at 2 of the questions from the pre-assessment working with Learning Target 4. I can use a comma to separate coordinate adjectives. First, let me erase my erroneous mark there. Which of the following sentences is correctly punctuated? In this case, we are looking for which sentence has the correct coordinate adjectives. Our first choice, under the Jim Crow laws, Black people were required to drink from separate, filthier bathrooms and attend lower quality schools. If we look at this, we see that our adjectives are separate, filthier. In this case, there is a comma. We need to use our two tests. Our first test is the and test. If we said Black people were required to drink from separate and filthier bathrooms and attend lower quality schools, that does make sense. It does not change the meaning of the sentence. If we worked with the reverse test and reversed the adjectives, we would see that we could say Black people were required to drink from filthier, separate bathrooms and attend lower quality schools. This again does make sense. So, separate, filthier are coordinate adjectives which require the comma. So this one is correctly punctuated. Let us look at the others and see if any others are also correctly punctuated. Under the Jim Crow laws, Black people were required to drink from separate, filthier bathrooms. We already know that separate, filthier are coordinate adjectives, and so we know that we do need the comma. In this case, it is not correctly punctuated. Let's look at the next example. Under the Jim Crow laws, Black people were required to drink from separate, filthier bathrooms and attend lower quality schools. Now, in this case, we see lower and quality has a comma. We know that separate, filthier requires the comma, so we know that this part is incorrect. But let us look at lower quality schools. In this case, we would need to use first our and test. We would say Black people were required to drink from separate, filthier bathrooms and attend lower and quality schools. That does not really make sense, so our and test has failed. Now we'll use the reverse test. Black people were required to drink from separate, filthier bathrooms and attend quality lower schools. That completely changes the meaning of the sentence. And so once again, this particular example is incorrectly punctuated. Let us look at the final example. Under the Jim Crow laws, Black people were required to drink from separate, filthier bathrooms and attend lower quality schools. We know, because of our previous work with the test, that separate, filthier is correct. We also know that lower quality could be correct. However, in this case, we need a hyphen because lower quality works together to modify schools, not lower schools and quality schools, but lower quality schools, which requires the hyphen. This does not have the hyphen. It is not the correct answer. Thus, the correct answer for our pre-assessment is the first one. Under the Jim Crow laws, Black people were required to drink from separate, filthier bathrooms and attend lower quality schools. Let us look at one time to work with this particular target. In this case, we are looking for the correct answer, which is the one that is actually incorrectly punctuated. So, as we know, sometimes on tests, we have the not factor. And as Ms. Badgett might say, what we are looking for is the one that is false. When we're looking for the correct punctuation, if we say it is correctly punctuated and the answer is true, then that is not our answer because we are looking for the one that is not correctly punctuated when the answer would be false for correct punctuation. Let us examine these more closely. Homer Plessy was a courageous, heroic African American who stood up for what he believed was right, even though his actions were against the law. In this case, we need to complete our two tests for courageous, heroic, because we see that those are the two adjectives placed next to each other. The first test is our and test. If we said Homer Plessy was a courageous and heroic African American who stood up for what he believed was right, That makes sense. So the and test holds true. Next, we need to look at our reverse order test. For the reverse order test, we look at changing the statement to say, Homer Plessy was a heroic, courageous African American who stood up for what he believed was right, even though his actions were against the law. In this case, that makes sense. Heroic, courageous, and courageous, heroic both work very nicely. So in both cases, the and the reverse tests both prove true. Thus, Homer Plessy was a courageous, heroic African American is correctly punctuated, and thus is not our correct answer, since we are looking for the one which is incorrectly punctuated. Let us try the tests with some other examples in this question. In the next statement, since the African American Civil Rights Movement, there were many others who have been persistent, fearless examples of standing up for what is right. Here we see that persistent, fearless are the adjectives we are looking for to decide if they are coordinate adjectives. If we try the and test, we see it says, since the African American Civil Rights Movement, there were many others who have been persistent and fearless examples of standing up for what is right. In this case, that makes sense. Persistent and fearless examples works very nicely. Let us try the reverse test. Since the African American Civil Rights Movement, there were many others who have been fearless, persistent examples of standing up for what is right. Again, that does not change the meaning of the sentence and makes perfect sense. Once again, both tests for coordinate adjectives can be answered yes and have passed. Thus, this is also not the answer, since we are looking for the one which is incorrectly punctuated. Let's look at our next statement. For example, Nelson Mandela was a motivating African leader who helped to end discrimination and inequality in South Africa. In this case, we are looking at the adjectives motivating, African. Even though African is capitalized, it is still an adjective. As you know, adjectives that are capitalized are called proper adjectives, and so you hear the robot voice to remind you that proper adjectives is an important thing to remember. Let us try the tests. For example, Nelson Mandela was a motivating and African leader who helped to end discrimination and inequality in South Africa. This sounds a little strange. Motivating and African does not really sound normal. Let us try reversing the order. For example, Nelson Mandela was an African motivating leader who helped to end discrimination and inequality in South Africa. Again, that does not sound quite right, and I think does change the meaning. African motivating leader sounds more like he's motivating Africans than that he himself was an African leader. Thus, this particular statement is incorrectly punctuated, which makes it a good candidate for the correct answer, since we are looking for the statement that is not punctuated correctly. But let us look at the last example just to be sure. You can be like these leaders of the past by being a brave, fearless student who speaks up and does something when you see something that is wrong. As we're looking, we see that brave, fearless are the two adjectives we are working with, modifying the word student. If we try the and test, let's erase our X's from before. If we try the and test, we see you can be like these leaders of the past by being a brave and fearless student who speaks up and does something when you see something that is wrong. That makes fine sense. A brave and fearless student works just fine. If we try the reverse test, you can be like these leaders of the past by being a fearless, brave student who speaks up and does something when you see something that is wrong. Also works. The reverse test also passes. So we see that the last statement is correctly punctuated and thus is not our correct answer. As we recall, in this sentence, in this question, we are looking for the statement which is not correctly punctuated. And for our purposes, that statement is the third statement. For example, Nelson Mandela was a motivating African leader who helped to end discrimination and inequality in South Africa. You should delete the comma here because it is incorrectly punctuated. I hope that you enjoyed and found helpful this review of coordinate adjectives as we prepare for our summative assessment. Good luck and have a great day.